Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on designing a good guided discovery task. I'm Alessia Vovk, a senior teacher at Green Country School and a trainer at TalkEn.Cloud Academy. So I'm thrilled to have you all here because guided discovery is one of the most engaging and impactful teaching approach for ESL learners. And today we will take a deep dive into this approach, examining what makes it so effective and how you can design tasks that truly empower your learners. But before that, let me switch into Ukrainian and tell you more about the TalkEn.Cloud. Що ж, TalkEn.Cloud. Що це таке? Найперше, це є бібліотека інтерактивних підручників, у якій зібрано 50 інтерактивних цифрових підручників для усіх рівнів, починаючи від beginner до advanced, як для школярів, так і для дорослих. Саме на цій платформі ви можете знайти деталізовані плани занять до кожного з підручників, що полегшує роботу всім викладачам. Також саме тут ви можете відслідковувати прогрес своїх учнів у виконанні завдань у їхніх підручників, а саме домашні завдання, тобто ці self-study або presentations, так? І також відслідковувати, як успішно вони справляються на заняттях. Саме на цій платформі також є тести з автоматизованою перевіркою до кожного з підручників, і навіть placement-тест, який дозволяє перевірити рівень англійської у учня. Велика бібліотека інтерактивних worksheets, де можна підібрати найпотрібніший матеріал для вашого заняття і сконструювати самому свій worksheet, тобто якийсь матеріал за допомогою платформи, тобто перетворити ваше завдання, яке ви хотіли би втілити у своєму занятті, у інтерактивне завдання. Також це є система менеджменту навчального процесу або LMS. Що сюди виходить? Найперше, це вона дає можливість створення профілів учнів та об'єднання їх у групи або призначення індивідуальних занять. Саме тут ви можете генерувати розклад занять своїх, прикріплювати вступні тестування, які автоматично визначать рівень англійської у учня. Можна тут організовувати розклад роботи вчителя, а також мати свій електронний журнал, задавати домашні завдання учнів, надавати їм зворотній зв'язок. Також це дуже зручно для переходу на онлайн-заняття, особливо це актуально для нашого сьогодення. І можна відслідковувати прогрес виконання завдань в інтерактивних підручниках та, як я вже зазначила, автоматизована перевірка тестів. Ну і також саме TalkEn.Cloud надає можливість розвиватися, оскільки часто організовує різні тренінги, вебінари, воркшопи, конференції, що доволі таки пізнавально для усіх. Які ж можливості для викладачів або репетиторів, вчителів? Найперше, це економія часу на підготовку до занять, економія часу на перевірку будь-яких завдань та тестів. Ви можете контролювати за своїм навантаженням та тайм-менеджментом та адаптуватись під потреби ваших учнів. Або ж, якщо ви керівник або засновник навчально-освітнього центру або менеджер, то це найперше налагодження навчальних процесів, якоїсь такої менеджерської рутини. Це полегшує перехід між змішаним або онлайн-офлайн навчанням, економить ресурси на пошуки, розробку програми, завдань, а також це стандартизує якість послуг. Ну і більше того, це є сучасною моделлю викладання. So, let's move on. And let's have a look at our agenda. So agenda is straightforward. We will start by defining guided discovery and discussing its benefits for ESL learners. Then we will explore the key elements of a well-designed guided discovery task, from setting clear goals to using scaffolding effectively. And finally, I will guide you through the process of designing a task step by step so you leave here with some practical tools you can use in your classrooms. So by the end of this webinar, you will know how to design effective guided discovery tasks that, first of all, promote active learning, help students uncover language rules independently, and strengthens critical thinking and retention. So throughout the session, feel free to drop your questions or reflections in the chat. Um, and okay, let's move on. Let's start with the basic question. What is guided discovery? So guided discovery is a way of presenting language, particularly grammar. We've got two approaches to present a new language. We can use deductive approach or inductive approach. So the deductive approach is teacher-centered and begins with explicit instruction. The teacher explains the rule. I will show you here an example. Then ask students to provide an example from the rule, as you can see here. And only then allows learners to practice applying it. So it has its own advantages. First of all, it's efficient and straightforward, especially for complex rules. It provides clarity and structure for learners who prefer direct explanations, and it works well for large classes or some limited time frames. But there are some challenges. First of all, it can be passive if learners are not actively involved, and it may not promote deep understanding or retention compared to discovery methods. And the inductive approach is learner-centered and emphasizes discovery. Instead of explaining the rules upfront, the teacher presents examples and guides learners to identify patterns or draw conclusions on their own. For instance, when teaching the past simple tense to low students, teacher can show them the simple text and ask to underline all the verbs to figure out the rule for forming um, regular past tense verbs that are that has ed ending. After that, the teacher can show them another piece of text to show that there are irregular verbs. This is also called noticing or consciousness raising. So now, when you know the difference between deductive and inductive approach, write in the chat, which approach do you prefer in your lessons, deductive or inductive, and why do you prefer it? You prefer it. Okay, see your answers. A lot of teachers prefer inductive. Okay, yeah, mixing both approaches is it's also a good idea. Yeah, inductive is more interesting for learners, agree. Okay, they love discovering things. Wow, that's great. Okay, good. Let's move on. And let's now um, have a look at the whole and deeper like definition of guided discovery. So, guided discovery is a learner-centered approach, as we've mentioned. It is also known as inductive approach. Yeah, it is used to introduce and clarify language. It consists in the providing students with an example of a target language item in the meaningful context, and then learners actively uncover language rules, meanings, or patterns through carefully designed tasks and questions. The teacher, during while they are uncovering the rules, yeah, the teacher is providing guidance and support as needed. So this method promotes critical thinking, engagement, and deeper understanding by encouraging students to analyze examples and draw their own conclusions. So this approach removes the teacher from the pedestal of a continuous explainer of the rules and turns one into a facilitator whose role is only to help, guide, and promote learning. Um, the explainers in this case will be your students. However, not knowing how to find out the pattern they need or where the starting point at all this is, they are provided with a set of activities and assistance from the teacher to attempt to figure out the rules for themselves. And as every approach, it has its own positive and negative sides. Let's have a look at why is this approach beneficial for ESL learners. First of all, it enhances engagement. Students are actively involved in analyzing and in understanding the language, making it more memorable for them. The next one is it builds problem-solving skills. It develops problem-solving skills as learners identify patterns and draw conclusions on their own. When students discover language for themselves, they are more likely to remember it. So that's why it promotes better retention. It also fosters independence. This method encourages students to become more independent learners. That's a crucial skill for language acquisition, of course. And the last one, it reflects natural learning because students observe, experiment, and to draw conclusions from the context on their own. Although it has its downsides, and let's have a look at them. First of all, not all learners will enjoy or feel comfortable with the guided discovery approach. Factors such as personality, cultural background, or proficiency level can influence how students respond to this method. Some learners may prefer more structured teacher-led instruction, particularly if they are used to traditional teaching styles or are less confident in their ability to explore and deduce rules independently. The second one, it's not for beginners. This approach relies on a combination of learners' existing knowledge and new concept they uncover during the activity. As beginners typically lack of the basic language skills needed to identify patterns or make connections, this one is not good for them. So guided discovery is generally more effective for students starting from the intermediate level. The next one, it can be challenging for teachers. It requires a strong understanding of the language, um, thorough research, and careful preparation to design effective tasks. Teachers must anticipate potential learners' difficulties and be ready to work with them later. Ensure also that the materials are clear and engaging, and also be ready to provide appropriate support during the discovery process. So this level of planning and expertise can make the approach more demanding um, compared to traditional teaching approaches. Um, One more drawback that not all grammar rules work well with this approach. While some rules are straightforward and easy for learners to deduce, many grammatical structures are irregular and have a lot of exceptions. This can complicate the discovery process. So there is a list of topics um, that work well with this approach. That's comparative and superlative adjectives, question tags, articles, conditionals work well, determiners, word order, backshifting reported speech, and anything where the form is very rule-bound, the meaning is straightforward, but the rules may be complicated, but still rule-bound. The form is rule-bound, yeah. So, could you please write in the chat whether you have ever tried the guided discovery approach in your teaching? And if yes, so how did it work? Okay, so that some of the students are familiar with the guided discovery, and that's great. Yeah, more attention from students and more interest. Agree. Okay, so let's move on and let's have a look at four key elements of a good guided discovery task. So there are essential elements of guided discovery lesson plan, and the first one is, of course, collaboration. So guided discovery doesn't work really well with individual students, and it's still better for groups, yeah, and especially when you can divide this group into some pairs or smaller groups. So that's very important to start out with having a great ESL classroom routine. If you feel that your students can work well in small pairs, in groups, they are ready to collaborate, to talk to one another in English. So it means that they are ready to try guided discovery and they are ready to discover some grammar patterns with their group mates. So this does take some time to build this classroom routine, but having students work with others always, even if they don't want to, will help to create the communication that we need for this approach to work. So one way to ensure collaboration is to use small groups or pairs to make each student participate as much as possible. The next one is task setting. Set the task for students and set it clearly. When setting tasks for students, it's crucial to scaffold the lesson effectively. This ensures students feel supported and understand how to approach the task, especially when using guided discovery tasks, because they usually are, they may be unfamiliar to them and they need a bit more demonstrations or a bit more explanations or um, just a bit more attention. Yeah. So the first that what you need to do, that's clearly explain what the students need to do step by step. It's very important to use simple but conscious language. Model or demonstrate the task if necessary. Show an example of how to start the task to give students clear idea of what's expected. You also have to check the understanding. Since guided discovery tasks might be new to students, it's very important to ask ICQ's instruction checking questions to ensure they understand what to do. The next one is monitoring. While students are working on the task, your role is to monitor. You can stay in the background or move behind the tables if it's an offline lesson or if it's an online lesson. You can join the breakout rooms on Zoom or if you use another platform. So make sure that they all are on the task. They know what to do, how to do, and they are on the right way. If the task has been set up clearly, students will focus on the goal and support each other through practice and feedback. And the last one is consolidation. At the end of the task, you should bring the class back together and check their work. This is the time to check for common errors and correct them. It's okay to be more of an explainer here because the students have already discovered how to use the language and you can just help them on this stage. Use questions to help the students discover further information about the target language and share it with the group. So let's move on to the most interesting, how to design a guided discovery task. So designing a good guided discovery lesson involves careful planning to ensure that learners uncover rules themselves through kind of analysis and critical thinking. A well-designed task is the foundation of guided discovery. The tasks must be clear, goal-oriented, and achievable within the given time frame. So here are the key stages for creating an effective guided discovery lesson. First of all, you have to identify the target language you want to teach. So decide which grammar structure or functions or vocabulary set you want to teach. But yeah, grammar is still the best for guided discovery. Clearly define the use and meaning, so when and why it's used, what it communicates, and form, so structure of language. After that, you have to create a context, provide a meaningful and engaging context where the target language appears naturally. It can be a short story or a text, a dialogue or a conversation, a relatable situation, for example, planning a party or giving advice. After that, you have to design a guided discovery worksheet handout, yeah? So, and how to do this, let's have a look here. So you have to, first of all, to prepare tasks that encourage learners to notice the target language in the context and deduce its rules. So you should design specific questions or tasks to guide learners through the aspects of language that's meaning, help learners understand what the structure communicates, discuss when and why the structure is used, and guide them to identify how the structure is formed. If you have a 90 minutes lesson and you teach high-level students and they are strong, you can use those tools like highlighting, ask students to find and underline examples of target structure, You can use categorizing, have students group examples based on similarities or differences, and you can also use gap fill task. So provide partly completed sentences where students complete or observe the missing form. But if you have a 45 minutes lesson or just weak students, it's better not to make your students look for the target language in the context because guided discovery has enough challenge and you do not need to make it complicated for them. You can highlight the target language in the text in advance and pay learners attention to them and ask to work on their use, meaning, and form in pairs. So for this, you need to scaffold the task perfectly. So let's have a look what is scaffolding. Yeah. So first of all, scaffolding is a teaching method where the educator helps support students to complete the task just beyond the level that they could achieve by themselves. So it refers to providing contextual supports for meaning through the use of simplified language, teacher modeling, visuals and graphics, cooperative learning, and practice, of course. So there are three types of scaffolding which are especially effective for second language learners. And the first one is simplifying the language, as I already mentioned. The teacher can simplify the language by shortening selections, speaking in the present tense, or avoiding the use of idioms. You also have to ask for completion, but not generation. The teacher can have students choose answers from a list of or complete a partly finished outline or paragraph, yeah, but still it's better to give them alternatives. So what to choose or some variants of answers, it will help them a lot. And the last one, that's visuals, of course. The teacher can present information and ask for students to respond through the use of graphic organizers, different tables, charts, outlines, timelines, and of course, graphs. So that's what you have to do with the tasks to make them as easy as possible. After that, when they have already worked on the guided discovery task, or when you have prepared the good guided discovery task, you need to prepare practice tasks. So that's controlled practice. After a guided discovery task, controlled practice helps reinforce the language rules. For example, if teaching the past simple tense, students could complete gap fill exercise. This will allow them to practice the structure with limited variation, ensuring they grasp the form. And the next one is free practice, of course. When students are familiar with the rule, free practice encourages them to use the language more creatively in freer context. After learning the past simple, students might engage in a role playing about their weekend activities or whatever. This task allows them to apply the language in a more natural, less structured way, promoting fluency and confidence. And the most important, you have to be ready to provide feedback. So throughout the guided discovery lesson, it's important for the teacher to be prepared to give timely and constructive feedback. So you can even so on this stage, it's very important to anticipate the problems that might happen or the most difficult points that your students might struggle with and be ready to provide feedback on those points. So, and now I suggest you to have a look at the examples. I've prepared a example on grammar. That's almost a lesson plan, grammar lesson plan on second conditional. And the first that you have to do, that's to think of leading and, of course, think of the context. So that's the first stage that you have to prepare in your lesson plan. I created a context for a present and second conditional about life on the moon. So I thought of starting by introducing the topic with an engaging news headline. You can see it here on the screen. So you may spark off the discussion with the question: do you believe that humans will live on the moon one day? Why or why not? And when you see that the students are engaged enough or they are interested enough in the topic, you can move on to the context. You can show them the context. I found some comments on the blog, and I think that that will be a good idea to pay their attention to these comments, to read the comments on the blog about what it might be like to live on the moon. They will have to decide which comment they agree with the most and explain why. So that's a reading for this task. They just need to look through the comments very quickly and choose the comment that they agree with the most. When presenting the context, you can provide them the context with already highlighted structure. This will help them, especially during the guided discovery task, because they can have a look at the context and find the structure, find the form, and this will help them a lot. If you feel that your students are strong enough to find the exponents, the form, the structure in the text, in the model, probably you don't need to highlight. But I really love when the form is highlighted in the text, even with some different colors. Why? You will see it a bit later. But still, I recommend when you have weak learners or just you're limited in time, only 45-minute lesson or 1 hour lesson, yeah, it's still better to have all of the structures highlighted. That helps a lot. That's a great example of scaffolding. So when your students are familiar with the context, you can provide them guided discovery task. So you can have a look here on an example that's a guided discovery task with some alternatives. That is also an example of scaffolding. You can see that there is yes, no questions, yeah, or alternatives, a real or imaginary situation, past, present, or future, yeah, condition, a result. This helps students a lot. They do not guess, but they choose the correct answers. So this give more chances that students will have more correct answers. That's very important to work on meaning during the guided discovery task. Form, you can see that I put it here, the form, the structure of the second conditional, and students just need to choose the correct option here or just fill in the gaps with the missing parts. So in here, you can have a look at this example that I mentioned with you. So have a look at this text with the highlightings in different colors, and have a look at this guided discovery task on form. You see how it's easy to spot what should be filled in or what should students choose. So green color here and green color in the text that past simple, yeah? So it will be easier for students to choose the correct answer. Or yellow color, for example. The yellow color in the text, we highlight all if, yeah? And it will be easier for them to fill in the gap with the missing word. So that is, again, example of scaffolding that helps a lot, especially during guided discovery tasks. So again, if you have weak learners or just low-level students, or you are limited in time, this approach is wonderful. So highlight everything, and that will be easier for your students to spot. And of course, when having guided discovery tasks, do not forget to make your students work on pronunciation. I really suggest do it in a open class, mostly not in pairs or individually, of course. It's better still to organize in an open class activity because students will be asked to listen to the example and pronounce it. So for example, if it's second conditional, it's a good idea to work on the contractions. Yeah, you see that there is a contracted form. The sentences are taken from the context again, and you can work on the pronunciation. It will help a lot. So drilling is also very, very important. After that, your students are ready to controlled practice task. So for this very lesson, I have chosen the correct alternative. So students, with the help of this task, will practice the structure, and that will be enough for them. And as a free practice, you can choose such an activity where they work in pairs, and they can apply the second conditional to some other imaginative situations in a communicative task, in a communicative way. As you can see here, I've provided an example how to build a dialogue, and of course, some prompts which they can use during their communication. And after this, you have to provide feedback, correct their mistakes, and of course, praise their use of second conditional, yeah, praise their successful use of the structure. Guided discovery approach also can be effectively incorporated into writing lessons. So, for instance, you can have a look at this worksheet that I have created for my students. The example, yeah, the modal where they can find the writing, yeah, the modal for writing. First we've got just reading. They just need to read the review, that's the movie review, and match it to the best summary. Then you have to work on the structure of the film review. And after this, you can see these two tasks, which are guided discovery tasks. Because students have to look through the story, look through the review once again, and choose whether the sentence, you can see that the grammar structure is highlighted here. So students can spot with the help of this highlighting what grammar do we use for story, for telling the story, for telling the plot, and for reactions. So again, such tasks works the best for in pair works, yeah. So by guiding students to uncover these patterns themselves, you not only enhance their understanding of the writing conversations, but also give them the tools to apply these features in their own writing. That fosters autonomy and confidence. While it's not recommended to base a vocabulary lesson entirely on the guided discovery approach, you can still effectively incorporate some of its principles. Guided discovery can be useful when combined with clear contextual clues to help students deduce meaning. So, however, so for example, you can show them this contextual context, yeah, this short piece of text with the highlighted adjectives or just target vocabulary in the text, and ask students to work in pairs or small groups to answer the questions like you can see here. But pay attention that you will work only on meaning while having this guided discovery task. You cannot work on the form, unfortunately. You can work on the form in open class using the inductive approach, yeah, but not guided discovery itself. After that, you can check the answers, work a bit on form and pronunciation, have controlled and free practice, and of course, feedback. So these were the examples that you can use in your lessons for future. And also, I would like to share with you some resources that you can use while preparing your perfect guided discovery worksheet or even the whole lesson. First of all, several modern ESL course books, they incorporate guided discovery approach to teaching grammar. And these books often use tasks that encourage students to analyze examples, identify patterns, and deduce rules before applying them. And the first example is, as you can see, that's English File by Oxford University Press. The English File series, it integrates guided discovery in its grammar sections. And after presenting a contextualized text, students are often asked to complete charts or answer questions that leads them to understand grammar rules. So it's a good one. Next one is Speak Out by Pearson. The Speak Out series includes discovery-based grammar tasks in its lessons, and students are typically asked to read a short text or listen to audio, then identify patterns or complete sentences with missing grammar elements. And that's also one of the example. The next one is Outcomes. That's by National Geographic learners. Um, it's it blends real-world topics with guided discovery. Grammar is often presented through authentic texts or dialects, and students work through questions to identify rules. This book combines grammar and writing skills with guided discovery elements. One more that's Cutting Edge by Pearson. It employs discovery tasks that lead. It employs discovery tasks that lead students to notice grammar rules in context as well, and often through listening or reading. One more, that's Grammar for Great Writing by National Geographic Learning. This book combines grammar and writing skills with guided discovery elements. It presents grammar in context, with students analyzing examples to deduce form and usage. You can see the picture of the book here. One more, that's Grammar in Use. While more focused on grammar practice, this series occasionally integrates guided discovery principle by presenting grammar through example sentences and encouraging learners to infer rules before practicing. So it presents grammar not only through the context, kind of dialects, listening, reading text or whatever, but also just for simple sentences. So that's sometimes also very useful, especially when you're limited in time. You can see the picture here, sorry. The next one that I will also share with you, that's of course TalkEn.Cloud, because it's an extensive library of teaching resources designed for ESL teachers with a strong emphasis on the inductive approach, first of all. So all of the lesson plans, they are created through the inductive approach. And many materials encourage guided discovery by presenting language in context and leading students through the tasks to uncover the rule and meanings. And the last book that I want to share with you, that Concept, Questions, and Timeline by Graham Workman. That's an awesome book, and that's a really fantastic resource for teachers that focuses on creating effective scaffolding for grammar teaching. This book provides ready-made CCQs and visuals, some timelines, as you can see here in the picture, which help present grammar structures in a clear and student-friendly way. So while it's not a course book, it's still a perfect tool for teachers designing guided discovery tasks. So could you please write in the chat which of the resources that we've mentioned do you really use, you already use, and which would you like to try? Okay, I see that you are familiar to most of the books that I've showed to you, and that's really good. So, yeah, okay, right. But now it's a high time for you to ask me some questions, if any. Um, so if you got any questions about the guided discovery, about the designing the wonderful and interesting worksheet for your students, you're welcome to write these questions to the chat, and I will be happy to answer them. If you're not sure what to ask, you can write to the chat what do you think is the most difficult in creating, in designing a good guided discovery task, or what is the most difficult in organizing such a lesson? Yes, preparing a really good guided discovery task is time consuming, but believe me, students benefit from those tasks and those lessons a lot. They will remember this grammar structure forever. So if you're having individual lessons, yeah, you're looking for something similar as guided discovery, it's a good idea to use just inductive approach in teaching, yeah? Make your students think, ask a lot of questions, elicit every single word from your student, ask a lot of CCQs. This help a lot um, your individual students, your student, yeah? You can try guided discovery with individual students, but instead of a partner that your student can have in a real class, you can be that partner and just help your student. Yeah. Do not just tell every single word. Just do not stand for everything, but elicit. Yeah, help and elicit. Mm. Yeah, it's not easy to find the examples of grammar. So this book, Concept Questions and Timelines that I showed you, the last one, it already presents you some sentences which are really helpful for your students during understanding the grammar rule, the structure, and the form. Or yeah, again, it's time consuming. It takes a lot of time to find the best resources. But yeah, it is beneficial for your students. It's not easy to adapt them to learners' level and needs. Yeah, it so that's why only your experience can make you to create really useful tasks. And so that's why guided discovery works well only with students who you really know. If these students are new, kind of, you don't know them well, you don't know their level of English very well, you don't know what they might struggle with, guided discovery won't work well. So if you feel that um, you really know your students very well, you know what grammar or what language they struggle with and what needs more retention, yeah, you still can use this guided discovery approach to present those pieces of grammar. But yeah, again, it needs your thorough preparation. Um, yes, this approach works perfectly starting from intermediate level. Is it possible to create such a task for your learners with their wrist, arm, I can, I can't? Yes, you can. Again, you have to prepare the tasks very attentively and use scaffolding perfectly. Make sure that you use color coding, different colors to highlight the structure. Um, and make sure that you use clear instructions. So make sure that you explain the task clearly. And of course, you can try use these with learners who are kind of lower level students. Yeah, A2, I guess, will be fine. For A1, you can try. Maybe your students are strong enough to work on such grammar with such approach because it depends on the students mostly. Yeah, I suggest you to try this approach in just in your lessons. Yeah, even if you've got lower level students or high level students, try to use this guided approach with your guided discovery approach with your students, and maybe your students will really, really love it and will benefit from it a lot and will ask you to prepare for them more and more tasks like this. So thank you very much for your active participation, for your questions, and for joining this webinar. I want to remind you that you can get a certificate for mm, this webinar. You will get the access to the test, first of all. You need to complete the test, and after this, you can get the certificate. To get the certificate, you also need to pay 100 hryvnias, and you will also receive the access to the article. So You will be able to look through all of the information we have discussed with you today, once again, even before completing the task. You will get the access to it after the end of the webinar, but not straightforward, not right away, but during the 24 hours. So just wait for it, wait for the message on your email. Mhm. If no more questions, so thank you once again. Thank you for active participation and see you in some further webinars. Have a nice evening, stay safe, and see you. Wish you the best guided discovery lessons in your teaching experience.